I can just remember testifying in front of that committee thinking, I cannot believe this is the stupidest thing I've ever done, asking these men to vote to let us govern
raise our
ourselves,
children.
Yes, yes.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am your host, Yvette Hampton, and I am back with Rinella today, and we are talking with Zan Tyler. If you missed parts 1 and 2 of our conversation with Zan, you are definitely going to want to go back and listen to those. She has such an incredible story about what the Lord has done through her life in providing the freedom that she had to be able to homeschool her kids. And you have that freedom as well because of people like Zan. And so, I shouldn't say that. Because of the Lord and what the Lord has done through people like Zan. So I want to kind of tie up your story. And then I want to talk a little bit, Zan, about homeschool freedom and what that means for us today and what we need to do to continue to protect that freedom. So kind of jump into maybe the later years, kind of how did this all end with your fight for homeschool freedom?
Well, we had that first public hearing, like we said, didn't do anything. Then we had the Senate hearing, and they tore up those regulations. And I just remember at that point, I thought that was kind of the end. I thought that was the end of the legislative story. Now we don't have these bad regulations, and we'll just go back to the badness that we had before that. That wasn't as bad as that.
Right.
And so I told my husband, he took off 3 days from work. And I was so tired. I'd lost the baby. I'd been threatened with jail. I was just physically and emotionally spent. So I said, I want to stay in my bed for 3 days. Don't let anybody in the room. I just want to read my Bible. I want to sleep. I want to read a good book. And so the next morning at 9, he came and woke me up. And I said, wait a minute, did you not get the memo? And he said, Zan, you need to talk to this person. This is David Beasley on the phone. David was a young legislator, and he was in the legislature a little bit before I started lobbying, but he was elected as a college student. And so we just kind of grew up together. Now, he went on to become governor of South Carolina, and he recently just won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in running an international organization. He's a real committed believer. Wow. And so he said, you just need to talk to David. He's got something to say. He said, Zan, I want you to meet me down here at the State Department today, or the State House today. I'm going to file Georgia legislation, which is, if you know anything about Georgia, all you have to do is send a letter of intent to your superintendent. And we had the substantial equivalence law. They could approve us or not approve us. It was just the whim of the school board and the local school board. So I went down with David. I'm so naive. I'm thinking, this is so fabulous. This time next year, all our lawsuits are going away and we'll have this Georgia law. Well, I get a call 2 days later from the chairman of the Senate Education Committee, Ed Garrison, and he said, Zan, this may work in Georgia. This is not working here, but I am going to appoint you as part of an ad hoc committee to draft homeschooling legislation that will work. Wow. So to make a long story short, we ended up with this law that required 7 things from you. They couldn't reject the curriculum if you showed you had it. So we just wanted to make sure that all you had to have was a high school diploma. You could use any curriculum you wanted. Those were our 2 hills to die on. Okay. But they wanted, standardized testing, 4.5 hours a day, 180 days, had to have a library, had to, just on and on and on. And, but we got the 2 things we wanted, and that was all we could get out of the committee. So we actually spent 2 years or a year and a half lobbying for that. The last day of the session, the House amended it to say you had to make a passing score. This is so technical, on the EEE exam if you don't have a college degree. That meant all of a sudden everybody passed it because they were sick of fooling with us. If you didn't have a college degree, you had to make a passing score on the test they give juniors in college who want to be teachers.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, our lawsuits don't just go away. Right. They triple. Yeah. I mean, it's exponential. And so the law caused more problems than it created. And that's when I got to know Mike Ferris. We sort of became friends through this last phase of this. And so, then like in 1989, Mike Ferris flew down. One of our board members went with me. By this time, David Beasley is chairman of the House Education and Public
For
Works
those
Committee.
that don't know, Mike Ferris is HSLDA.
Yes. Sorry.
People,
yes.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want people to know.
He was the founder and president of HSLDA,
Yes.
and now he's the CEO of ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom.
Okay, thanks.
And so we're having this big legislative committee, and David Beasley said, "Zan, I think we can do this with a technical amendment. We think it's just kind of going to be one and done, and he's going to get in there, and it's going to be great." So 2 or 3 months later, I was at some big Republican dinner, and my friends found me and said, "Zan, we can't take care of your bill this year. We've got abortion. We've got an anti-abortion law. We can't handle all these emotional Christian things in one session." So, I just went home and really, I just cried my eyes out. I felt like it was Narnia. It was always winter, but never Christmas.
Yeah.
And so the only time I ever clean off my desk is when I'm really depressed. And so, my desk is like overflowing with all these papers. And I found a suggestion from an attorney that I had worked with in those early days. He said, "Zan, you need to set up an organization like the private school accrediting organization, count homeschoolers as private schoolers and go for it."
Yeah.
So I called Mike that night. I called Mike that night late, like 11 or midnight or something. I said, "Do you think this will work?" He said, "Yep, call me in the morning." So we actually set up this organization that Joe and I started, South Carolina Association of Independent Homeschool SCAES, as an organization similar to SCISA, and we would accredit homeschoolers like they were private schoolers. So we got some traction on that. We had 120 brave families come on board with us.
Wow.
And all the private school people I met with, I was so careful to meet with all of our friends and tell them what we were doing so nobody was taken by surprise and I could garner support, because we needed support outside the homeschooling community because we didn't have a big homeschooling community. And so I had really done my homework and done all of that. And they said, "Zan, keep your test scores. Your test scores will be great. Homeschoolers do well. You've probably got 2 years." Well, 3 months later, 14 of our families in one school district were threatened with truancy. And I mean, the light on the front porch in the middle of the night, wanting to give the subpoenas to the children, people crawling out their bathroom windows and getting in their cars to go see their in-laws. It was just one of those horror stories.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, SCAES was in court. We were in court battles for a year and a half. Mike, is way too complicated to get into here in all this now, filed a class action suit against the use of the EEE with homeschoolers. And because in SCAES, we were only requiring homeschoolers to have high school diplomas, and they could use any curriculum they wanted to. So we were doing an end run around the law because we wanted out of the public sector. And so Mike won a huge case at the Supreme Court decision, at the Supreme Court level, that opened the door for SCAES. I'll never forget. This was just such a huge decision. And they called me from HSLDA. I mean, I'm at home. I'm young. I got a ponytail and blue jeans and t-shirt on. And, and they're calling me, "We won. And they're reading me, what they had of the decision. And I mean, I'm just crying because I could just hear the walls of Jericho crumbling, and so I'm crying and they're cheering and they're saying, "We don't care if you're in your pajamas, go pick up that decision and overnight it to us." I mean, again, no email,
Yeah.
And so that really opened the door for SCAES. We had the Attorney General's office and the attorney for the State Department of Education meet with us and asked me what I wanted. And I said, I want SCAES in law. So actually, when the SCAES law passed, it was the first time in the history of the country that a state legislature had given a private sector organization the same power as local school boards in approving homeschool programs. So I remember Mike writing this article and talking about how it was this great advancement of of self-government.
Yeah.
We became self-governed and totally out of the public sector.
Yeah.
And I can remember testifying. I mean, we still had roads to hoe in that legislation session, even though it was supposed to be easy. We called for 3 days of fasting and prayer before I went in to testify for the Senate Education Committee, where we should have lost the whole shebang, and the Lord just was so faithful to hear that and deal with it. And I can just remember testifying in front of that committee thinking, I cannot believe this is the stupidest thing I've ever done, asking these men to vote to let us govern
raise our
ourselves,
children.
Yes. And but the SCAYS law passed in 1992.
Wow. And SCAYS is still around today.
SCAYS is still
running
around.
Strong.
Yes, still running strong. As a matter of fact, our membership has been up about 60%. We're a little bit of a different model. We have educational counselors at every level, special needs, high school, middle school, elementary school. And we do a lot of curriculum counseling. We have a bookstore where people can come and look at curriculum. We do a lot of just in-person counseling, phone counseling, Zoom counseling now, where we just help. I mean, we just walk alongside homeschool moms and help them. Some people don't need any support. Some people need lots of support. So,
and that's in South Carolina. So if you live in South Carolina and you're listening to this,
and we actually have people around the world, from missionaries and military families and people in other states who just want some accountability, but a lot of support.
Okay.
And so
that is amazing.
Wow.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Are you looking for a fantastic online math program that removes the burden of teaching math? Then Teaching Textbooks is for you. Our family's been using teaching textbooks for years, and we couldn't be happier. Our girls say that it makes learning math fun, like a game, and they love that it's interactive. Teaching Textbooks uses step-by-step video instruction and does all the grading for you. The newest version is available now with an app that even works offline. Sign up for the first 15 lessons for free at teachingtextbooks.com. That's teachingtextbooks.com. We are back with Zan, and we have a few minutes left. And in these last few minutes, Zan, I want to talk about homeschool freedom. I mean, that's where this whole conversation has been leading towards. And it's funny. We started the conversation talking about fear and how to overcome fear. And to trust. And through your story, it's really neat to just see God's hand on you, and you trusted him. And this is where you've gone today. And we're in a position in our country right now where we are having to trust the Lord with things that we can't see. We have no idea. I mean, we could not, a year ago, we never would have imagined that we are where we are today. And a year from now, who knows where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing, what freedoms we're going to be fighting for. And so I want to talk specifically about homeschool freedom and why that matters. Why does it matter? We know why it matters, why you fought for it. But we, like Abby said earlier, we kind of take it for granted. We forget. And some don't even forget because some don't even know the freedoms that we have today. How do we keep and hold tight to these freedoms that we have?
The Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. has a plaque that says freedom is not free. Just like both of our dads are World War II veterans, and they were willing to give their lives for freedom. We have got to realize that freedom is not free. And I think Edmund Burke said, all we need for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. This is not, we are not in a neutral zone when it comes to freedom. You're either fighting for freedom and maintaining and growing in freedom, or you're sliding back. And sometimes it's like the frog in the pot of hot water. It starts out cold and they don't know they're boiling to death until it's too late. So, you don't know what you've lost till it's gone. So we have got to be vigilant to fight for freedom. There's a number of ways we can do that. Everybody can do a little. I mean, I'm not saying everybody's called to be an out front lobbyist or freedom fighter or
Right.
whatever you want to call it. But everybody needs to know who their state senator and state representative is.
Mhm.
Everybody needs to get to know somebody involved in local government so that they can put a name with a face. If you're too scared to do that by yourself, invite your state representative or your state senator to your co-op.
Mhm.
Meet them during day at the Capitol. You are going to have to set aside your intimidation to get involved locally.
Yeah.
It might, your whole penchant might be the fine arts or whatever, but just make sure you're doing something in your corner of the world that makes a stand for freedom. Join your state organization.
Mhm.
Our
Yep.
state organizations are really the gatekeepers for freedom.
Yep.
Sometimes we think maybe we don't need them, maybe we're irrelevant, they're irrelevant, but that guarding freedom, watching the legislature every day, that is so invaluable. And then I would say on a national level, make sure you join HSLDA.
Yep.
You may never have a policeman show up at your door, but you're helping the person in another state prevent that. I mean, in South Carolina, if that Tripoli case had passed the state Supreme Court, there were like a dozen states waiting in the wings to implement this front end credentialing that you had to pass a test before you could homeschool.
Mhm.
So what happens in one state matters, whether you live in that. I mean, because that homeschooling regulation is coming to a state
Right.
near you. If we're not on guard, Abraham Lincoln said it is so true. We're either going to hang together or we're going to hang separately.
Yeah.
So we got to hang together, stick together,
Yep.
to do this.
Yep.
Right.
So to
Yep.
clarify a little bit, Abby, I want you to jump in on state organizations because you talked about state organizations. And for those maybe who are new to the podcast, because we have a lot of new listeners, and maybe those who have heard it, but they just need a reminder. Abby, what are state organizations and because you're on the board of Homeschool Idaho, you and your husband, Jesse.
Right.
So-
So Zan hit it pretty well. State organizations are the gatekeeper. And almost all, the majority of states do have a state organization. And they are watching what's going on as far as bills that are coming through, as far as threats to our homeschool freedom. And they're on the front lines. So they also, in most states, are the very people that brought us from where Zan was, the threat of being jailed, or in the state of Idaho, that there were parents actually jailed, to the place that we are now, where in all 50 states, we are free to homeschool. So it is crucial that we support
Mhm.
those states. And again, like Zan said, maybe not everybody is out there on the front lines, but you said before, Yvette, when people look at Zan, she was homeschooling 3 kids simultaneously while she was doing all of this. And so many are like, man, I can't even get through my homeschool day, let alone add on all these things. But I don't think we're not called to do it all. But what
Right.
we've learned in this series with Zan is, even though we're not called to do it all, we are called to do what God has asked us to do with our all, with 100% of who we are. And if you are a parent, you are called to teach and train your child up in the Lord. You are called to be their primary educator. You're called to be a parent. And in that means you are called to defend the freedom to do so. Because the truth is, they're coming after our kids, and we need to band together, and we need to stand strong like the Zan Tylers, and those that have gone before us, and get involved with your state organization. And that might just simply mean send an email to say, how can I help? How can I lick stamps? I mean, everybody can lick stamps. And
They come sticky already, Abby.
Oh, you're right. So there, you don't even have an excuse. You can peel the stamp off and stick it on. But I think that if anybody has learned anything, our freedom isn't free. And we didn't get to where we were by people doing nothing. And so it is important that we are doing something, that we are actively fighting and defending the freedoms that have already been fought for. We cannot be complacent. And I think that it would do such a dishonor to those that have gone before us for us to just sit in our houses and assume that this is how it's going to remain. We need to be on the front lines. And more than being on the front lines, we need to be on our knees, because as we've learned in this story, God is sovereign, and he he has a plan, and he's going to do, here's the deal. God's going to do the heavy lifting, as we've heard in this story. But we need to be willing to say yes. We need to be willing to show up, even if we're in our blue jeans and our ponytails, or in bed saying, I'm going to stay in bed 3 days and the phone call rings. We need to say yes and show up. And then we need to get on our knees and pray, and then watch God do the heavy lifting, because he's going to do it. But let's show up. So
yeah. And in that prayer, ask the Lord how he can use you. We are fighting a real battle, and there is a real enemy for the souls of our children, and they will do anything and everything. We've seen that happen in the past. We've seen it happen, in all of history, but we've seen in the past year that we have a real enemy who are they're fighting hard to get to our kids. And if we don't do something, then we have no right to say anything when that freedom could be taken away.
We cannot take it for granted. If I can say anything, it is do not take it for granted. Do something. If you're doing nothing, like Yvette said, you can't then complain when the freedoms are taken. And let's show honor and thankfulness for those that have gone before us by carrying the torch on. You know what? I mean, we've got children and we've got grandchildren, and we cannot just assume it's going to stay the way it is. So let's rise up and be the Zan Tylers and carry this, pass the torch on.
Yeah, that's right. There's something. And we will put, I'll put the link in the show notes, but so that if you go to the Schoolhouse Rocked website, on the top banner, you'll see homeschooling in your state. If you click on that, that will take you to the Homeschool Freedom website. And that website all you have to do is click on your state, and that will take you straight to your own specific state organization. So you can find out exactly who they are. We've done all the research for you. We've got all the links and the clicks and stuff there for you. Find out who your state organization is. And then Zan, really quickly, I want you to talk, you mentioned it already, but HSLDA, for those who don't know, is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. In a quick nutshell, tell us who they are and then how we can get involved and partner with HSLDA.
You can join HSLDA. I think it's $115 a year. If you had to pay an attorney, that's like a third of an hour.
Oh, sure.
But they work with state leaders around the country to ensure freedom. They're taking things to court. I mean, it's like the state organizations are the boots on the ground, and they're like the Air Force that comes in and sees the big picture and what lawsuits need to be answered or filed, or what parent needs to be protected. So it just gives us an added measure. These are all constitutional lawyers and litigators, and they're all homeschool dads, and it's the largest homeschooling organization in the world, and it gives us a presence in DC. It gives us a presence in the Supreme Court if we need it. It gives us a presence in circuit courts, all or in state courts, all around the country. It just does things for us. I felt like while we were working in the legislature, HSLDA was the battering ram that kept battering on the door, to kind of knock that freedom door open for us. And it was the both ends. So I just can't say that enough, that we need to be freedom minded enough that we're thinking beyond our own front door.
Yes. And one more thing I didn't mention with the state homeschool organizations that made me think of when you sent out the letters and 600 people showed up at that meeting, and you said that the numbers counted, right? That politicians can count, right?
Yes.
And I think every state homeschool organization, they're the ones that send the alerts when there's something happening. And, the world is noisy and we get 1,000 emails and we just tend to swipe them, delete. When you get one of those alerts from your state homeschool organization, which by the way, you have to sign up to get those. So go to your state website and sign up, do what they ask you to do, because that is this day and age, that's the 600 showing up, right? That is us in numbers. When they're getting 500, 600, 700 emails saying we oppose this bill,
right?
They're going to hear us. Don't say someone else will send it, because if everybody says that, they're getting one email and they're going to ignore us. So be one of the 600 that shows up.
Right. Yep. We are much stronger together, like you said, Zan. And as far as HSLDA, it's not just that you have that legal backing; they offer so much more. And we've said this before on the podcast. We do not have an affiliate account with them or anything. We don't get paid anything to promote them. so strongly believe in the importance of being part of your state organization and HSLDA because we have to keep our freedoms to homeschool.
Yes.
And so they offer lots of, back, I guess it was last summer before my oldest daughter was going into high school, I called and spoke with one of their high school consultants, and she literally walked me step by step. I was on the phone with her for, I don't know, at least an hour. And she walked me through all of what I need to do for record keeping and transcripts and all of it, because it was a little bit scary. I'd not homeschooled high school before. And they have a special needs department. So if you're homeschooling a special needs child, they can help walk you through that process. They are just a wealth of information and resources. And your state organization does much of the same. So be part of those at the very, very least.
Yep.
Be a member of your state organization and HSLDA, and then pray and ask how the Lord can use you. So Zan, you have
brought us to tears.
You have brought
laugh.
You brought Abby to tears. You have moved in me as well so much, and I am so grateful to know you and the things. I'm grateful for the fight that you were willing to fight on our behalf, not even knowing what you would be doing and the lives that you would be impacting. So thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you for being obedient to the call that God put on your life and for the impact that you've made in the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, God has used you in a big way.
A privilege. I don't guess I have time to share the biggest lesson I ever learned in government.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, you do.
So that meeting that I had with Mike Ferris and David Beasley, who was the chairman of our House Education and Public Works Committee, that was when we got the good news that we thought everything might work out. Well, it's winter, it's cold. Mike and I walk out into the lobby area of the State House, and he looks at me and he said, "That's great news. That is the most we could have hoped for." And I burst into tears. And he said, "What is wrong with you?" I said, all of a sudden, I realized what I'm looking at. Another round of legislative campaigns that I have to plan. My kids are going to live at the State House again. I mean, it was just this overwhelming oppression. And I looked at Mike and I said, I don't know that I have the shoulders for this anymore. And he says, "Well, it sounds like you need a new set of shoulders to me." And so he doesn't remember saying that. So he walks off. I go to my car. I mean, it's pouring down rain. It matches my mood. And I get in the car. I'm soaking wet. I'm crying. I'm a mess. And I had not turned my radio off. It's Christmas. And when I turn my car on, over the speakers blare somebody reading the verse, "And the government shall be upon his shoulders."
Wow.
And I thought, there's my new set of shoulders.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, it just was like God saying to me, just like you were saying, Abby, I'm just the co-laborer. I mean, I'm just going along for the ride and working where God is, I hope. That's what we all want to be. But when, that just really forever changed me. And the government shall be upon his shoulders, because his shoulders are big enough.
That's right.
And you're strong enough, and he's sovereign, and he's good. And so that's, if I can leave anybody with any thought,
that's right.
It's who Jesus is.
Yes. Amen.
I can't think of a better way to wrap this up. So thank you so much, Zan. You are a blessing, my friend, and I am thankful to know you.
Well, thank y'all. What a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you so much.
Fun. And thanks, Abby. So much fun to always be on with you. You guys have a great rest of your week. Make sure you share this podcast with your friends, and we will be back on Monday with another great episode. See you then. Bye.
Bye, y'all.